Outlook Training, Unit 5, Achieve Better Results Through Effective Communication and Delegation. In Unit 5, we're going to look at how to effectively plan and manage all of your communication and reduce mind traffic. We're going to capture cycling thoughts and ideas, plan our communication, record notes from conversations and easily retrieve notes when needed, and effectively delegate and follow up tasks. Delivering and communicating outcomes. We spend most of our day engaged in communications. In our 21st century economy, we spend most of our day engaged in some sort of communications. Whether it's reading, writing, emailing, all are essential communication tools, but it's through listening and speaking that we interact most effectively. To be competitive requires effective communication skills. We need to be able to communicate with people both upstream and downstream in the work processes. Also, the speed and reduced expectation time for our replies, answers, solutions has continued to get and continues to get shorter. When you think about communication and how you operate with the tools to reduce mind traffic, do you often feel stressed by 1,000 things to remember? Do things pop up in your mind at all sorts of odd times in the middle of important conversations while focusing on an important project, or worse, in the wee hours of the night, and then they keep you awake for the rest of the night? One of the key strategies that you'll learn today is how Outlook reduces mind traffic and helps you sleep better. So we're going to take a look at our communication skills status by looking at 5 questions. Do you plan ahead when communicating? With 1 being never and 5 being always. Do you capture information for an issue or project in one place? Do you end a communication by capturing follow-up activities and priorities? Do you easily find and associate information with a person or project, etc.? Do you exercise good listening skills, hearing somebody out, and are you able to paraphrase their intent? What I would like you to do is take a look at these 5 questions and score them from 1 to 5 in how you communicate. And once you're done that, we'd like you to total your score by adding up the numbers that you have chosen. We're going to talk about next some best practices, and by following the communication best practices, we hope that you'll be able to score in the 20 to 25 range at all times. How do you currently manage your communication? We're going to talk about some best practices to make sure those communication processes are working well for you. The first thing that you want to do is you want to plan ahead. Have a written plan regardless of who you're calling or meeting with. You want to capture information, often using an electronic app or paper or a filing procedure to track verbal communications. In the end, you want to have one place to keep all your notes. Remember to record what was said, who said it, and what was agreed to. The third thing is a process to follow up. You want to be able to activate all follow-ups so that you are prepared to address anything that was agreed to in those conversations. You want to be able to store and retrieve those communications. Associate the information with an individual or project. That could be by last name, maybe by company name, or by whatever project you're working on. The communication process. You can apply the 4-step communication best practice in Outlook with a contact record, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So using a contact record, you can plan, capture the response, store follow-up, and store and retrieve information about that particular conversation or communication. So the next item we're going to look at is using contacts to plan a call and capture some of your cycling thoughts. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our contacts here at the bottom left-hand corner. I'm going to plan a call with a particular person on my team, and it's a person that I already have a contact created for, so I'm going to search for them up here in the top search bar. And it's Mary Jane Watson that I'm actually looking for making a call with. So I'm going to double click on that particular contact. And you can see that this is a contact I've created. I've got some information here about Mary Jane. And over here in the notes section, this is where I'm going to add some notes or some details of what I'd like to cover in the call. I always date everything so that I have an approximate date when things were noted in the notes here. And for this particular call, I have a few items I want to discuss, and I want to discuss those by phone. We're planning a party, so there's a number of things I just want to confirm with Mary Jane, like the party schedule, some information about decorations, and I want to know if the food has been booked. All right, so I'm going to click Save and Close once I've got all of those details of what I want to prep for the call. If any other topics come to mind between now and that phone call that I make, I'd simply can open up this record for the person and add those notes as needed. When it's time for me to sit down and actually make the call to Mary Jane, I would open up that particular contact, and then I can have those topics right in front of me so that I know exactly what I want to make sure that I cover during that phone call. Excellent. So now on the date that we're going to make the call to Mary Jane Watson about the party, we're going to open up that contact record, and you can see the items that we had noted that we wanted to discuss. And so as we're having this conversation, I simply can be adding notes that we've discussed different items. So, you would add those as that conversation's having, or you might be making notes. So that you have exactly what was covered and you have an ordering here. And then maybe something else as you're having the conversation comes up, and you certainly can add those into this conversation notes. So as you've kind of noted all those different items, and you feel confident that you've discussed everything that you need to have done, you can actually go up here to the top and change to discuss to discussed and confirmed, or however you want to make sure that have noted that you've arranged everything and you feel satisfied that that conversation has been dealt with. Then you can then say save and close, and that conversation is now documented in that contact. So if you needed to pull that up again to remind yourself of the different items, you definitely can do that at any time. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about follow-up. Very often conversations with others results in promises. To ensure that these action items do not get lost, best practices recommend that you create a task to follow up. Let's say that you're talking to a coworker and he or she promises to get back to you by a particular date. After recording this as part of your notes in the person's contact record, you do the following. So what I've done is I've pulled up the record and the conversation I've had with Mary Jane Watson. At the end of a conversation, Mary Jane promised to look after arranging parking, and she's going to do that by Tuesday, October 4th, and get back to me with those arrangements. So I want to make sure that I just double check with Mary Jane that that's happened, and so I'm going to want to create a task for that particular item. So I'm going to highlight that item on the screen there in my contact. I'm going to drag it down to my tasks here by holding the right mouse button and dragging and dropping it down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a task. So I'm going to say that I'm going to follow up with Mary Jane on parking. And you can see that the notes that were in my contact have been copied here into the notes on the task. And my start date is today, and I want to make sure this is done by Tuesday. And so this is one where I would issue a reminder to make sure that I check back. And I'm going to set maybe noon to check with Mary Jane to see if that's been done and ready to go. And so I'm going to save and close this guy so that I have a task now created, and I've also noted it within the contact. So I have a full record under the contact as well of all the conversation. An Outlook contact record can be a comprehensive record of all your communication with a person. So we started out by showing you about a phone call, planning for it, and then follow up. But you can also use it to track all of your correspondence, including email correspondence, meetings, attachments to emails from the contact. You can link appointments to your contact. So a number of ways that you can keep a comprehensive record all in one place, so that when you open up that particular individual, you know exactly what communication you've had in all different formats with them. So as you start to use your contacts as a listing of all the correspondence you're having with an individual, these are just some tips to keep your contact notes organized. It helps if you date them. So starting with the most recent items appearing at the top of the notes with the date that you're putting that entry in. You might want to code the type of communication, whether or not it was an email, an in-person conversation, whatever method that you were communicating with that particular individual. Color coding it, so changing it to different colors depending on what type of communication, or maybe it's part of a particular project and you color all the lettering a certain color so that it's easy to identify in the contact. Some best practices is maybe to use some of the following codes, like I for incoming call, O for outgoing, M for meeting, E for email, VM for voicemail. So a number of ways that you can come up with short forms to keep your notes organized in your contacts. All right, so before we go on to show you how to delegate a task in Outlook, it's worth considering that priority research shows that effective managers master both the art and the process of delegation. Let's start with the art. So the art of delegation. You want to communicate early, often, and in writing. A verbal advisory of an assignment that an assignment is coming is always appreciated. You can use the 70% test. If someone else should be doing the work and can perform at 70% of your level, then give them the assignment. At that point, you're working on managing carefully to develop that particular individual's full potential. Don't assume anything. You have to be very specific when you're delegating. Generally, people will work up to the level of the communicated expectations. You need to be clear and precise about what you expect. If documentation is involved, give the other person the originals. Retain the photocopies for yourself if necessary. Originals convey a much stronger sense of ownership and accountability for completion. Delegate multiple tasks for an individual at one time. This allows the recipient to better plan for producing the desired results because they have a fuller picture. You're not giving it to them in little pieces. Establish clear deadlines, dates, and times. This is crucial. You need to be very clear on what your expectations are. Agree upfront on interim checkups to avoid interfering with the work or displaying doubts about their completion. So if they expect there to be a checkup at a particular time, then they're not feeling like you're micromanaging or are hovering over their work. When possible, inform the recipient exactly how you'll use the results of their work. When possible, also ask the recipient what they think they complete or when they think they can complete the work, and determine whether or not that's an acceptable deadline. We're now going to look at the process of delegation, and we're going to do that by using these 5 steps. The first step is to plan before you delegate. Always think of how the team can help accomplish the job. You need to evaluate and look at each team member's strengths. Then you want to decide who to assign the task to. After you've taken the time to evaluate each individual's strengths, choose the best fit or the most skilled individual in that area to complete the task. It's not always effective or the best choice to choose the individual who's the easiest or the closest individual to you. You want to communicate in writing. You're going to put your expectations down in writing to help make the task and commitments clear to the person you're delegating to. You want to make sure that you agree on dates and timelines for completion. 4 is to manage and evaluate. It's important to keep up with the status of a task that has been delegated and to set predetermined time to follow up. It's helpful to create a task request in Outlook, as this aids in the control and follow-up. And last is recognition and reward. Once a delegated task has been completed successfully, or you see positive results, reward and recognition are important to ensure that those results and actions are repeated in future requests. We're going to look at how to delegate a task using Outlook from an email request. So I've received an email request to distribute some communications on a particular program called People Forward. I need my HR advisor to distribute that information to the rest of the team. So I'm going to assign that task for her to complete. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the email and I'm going to right click and hold. And I'm going to drag that over to our task folder here, the clipboard with a check mark. And I'm going to release once I get over there. And this particular one, I'm going to say copy here as a task with attachment. So we've done this before in previous sessions, but you can see what happens is that a task is actually opened and it's input some of the information from that email. For this particular subject, it doesn't make much sense for what I'm asking the individual to do. So I'm going to actually change that subject to something that makes more sense. I'm going to ask that my HR advisor send communication from People Forward to management team. I'm going to say it's as of today's date, and I really want to have her have it done by the end of the day. So I'm going to leave the due date as today. And this is a pretty high priority item. It's a same day item, so I'm going to change the priority to high. And I'm not going to set a reminder because it needs to happen today. What you can see here right now is the owner is actually myself because I am currently creating the task. And then in the notes section, you can see that there is the email that has the associated information. You certainly can add more information. So I'm just going to say, please send an email memo to all managers by the end of the day summarizing the communication that is attached. All right, so if I was to say save and close at this point, what would happen is this would become a task that I'm still the owner of. But I want to assign this to someone else. So you can see here at the top under task, there is assign task button. So I'm going to click on that one. And what we're going to do is it comes up very similar to what you would do to send an email to somebody. So there's a to button, and you certainly can click on the to button to get into your address books. So I'm going to actually just choose to pick another one of my emails, but you certainly can pick anybody in your contact list, or you could type in the email. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just type in an email to send it to. And you can see that it has now the subject that I had sent, the start and due date. At this point, the status is listed as not started, and it's considered a high priority project. There's two options as the current owner that you can choose, and one is keep an updated copy of this task on my task list. And sometimes That is helpful to do if you're using or assigning many tasks to other people. And sometimes you might get, it's helpful with follow-up that you don't lose track of who has what task. And the second option is send me a status report when this task is complete. So once I assign this to somebody, they will have control over saying whether or not they have finished this particular task. And when they mark that task as complete, I, as the original owner, would then get a status report letting me know that that was all done and ready to go. So I am going to send this, and that will then get okay, we've got some spell checks, and that's now then sent to the new individual. But you can also see from here that it has been listed under my task list as well. So when I click on that item, I can now see that it's due today. It's waiting for a response from the person that I sent it to, and it's got the details of what the task is. But now you can see that there is a new owner, and this is the email that I sent it to. It still has all the details that I sent in that task, and so then I have that information readily available to me. If I am at a point where I would like a status update, I haven't heard from the recipient, you certainly can click this button to send a status report and ask for that person then to respond. So it's a handy way to just delegate and have a way that you can document and keep track of those tasks and any follow-up that you've done. Unit 6, Priority Planning for Results. After this completion of this unit, you'll be able to describe the planning process and know the importance of this essential skill set, apply a strategy to maintain your work-life balance, how to incorporate your annual and monthly goals into your daily work plan and help maintain a strong work-life balance, and finally, applying a 5-step daily planning process. We've spoken throughout this Outlook course about the importance of managing your work-life balance and how we can use Outlook as a tool to assist in this. And so the final part of the course is we're really going to look at how we plan overall. And we're going to break that up into annual planning and then some daily planning best practices. So when you look at annual planning, at Co-ops, we have adopted the corporate performance management model. And a big part of that model is to establish goals. And so when we look at annual planning and establishing those goals, we want to make sure we're looking at both the business and personal side. Business goals are often set based on what the company is wanting to achieve. But you need to take the time to think about your personal plans as well and how that will affect the balance of what you're able to achieve in that year. When you're sitting down to create goals, you want to use the SMART structure. The SMART structure is that the goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and trackable or time-bound. It really provides focus to your work and the ability to set out a process and timelines. You want to formalize and record. You certainly want to make sure that these are written down. You do want to, as I said, create a timeline and markers of what you want to achieve by what timeline. And it fits nicely to have Outlook as a tool because you have the ability to do that electronically and all in one place. And then the last item is that you want to review it regularly. And sometimes we write things like a goal down once a year, and then we tuck that away, that written piece of paper. What Outlook will help you do is to actually put it at the forefront, because you can set meetings, you could set tasks and reminders to make sure that it brings you back to focusing on what you had set out to achieve this year in that goal. The last key to managing your work-life balance is the daily planning best practices. Your daily plan is the most vital part of your planning. We all have 86,400 seconds to allocate every day. Think of it as a bank account. You cannot carry over any unspent amount at the end of each day. Indeed, time is our most valuable resource. If you follow the 10 commitments that we're going to talk about now, we guarantee that you'll invest every second to your purpose, and hopefully you'll see that you're more productive than ever before. So the first best practice is to commit time for your highest priorities and treat this time like you would an appointment with a person. Make sure you're generous with that time and don't underestimate. Remember that you want to focus on the important tasks and the ones that provide the greatest value for you and for the business. Try to commit 10 to 15 minutes to plan for your tomorrow, for your next day. Do this before you leave the workplace. It's a stress relief to go home with a plan at the end of the day, rather than going home and having those cycling thoughts running through your head in the middle of the night. Commit time to manage your emails. Don't let your emails plan your day. Having your Outlook open to your calendar is one of the key ways you can do that. And how you manage those emails and a once and done with them is so important. Commit time for appointments, meetings, and scheduled phone calls. If you are scheduling meetings, make sure that you're accurate in your estimate of time. If you're traveling, make sure you include that travel time on your calendar. Commit time with your team, colleagues, to help them help you. Practice good communication skills. You really want to be clear in your expectation and have lots of communication so that you can keep your team well informed. Commit some personal time to stay healthy and fit. Your health and your ability to manage your stress and workload is huge. Make an appointment with yourself for a walk, a run, something that you enjoy doing every day, just even for 10 minutes. Commit time for lunch and an energy break. You need a mental rest. If you take that time to have that break or refuel, it will help with your thought process, your ability to see things clearly. Commit time for your family, friends, and community. You want to make sure that you're not just giving to the people at work. You want to give generously to your time to the special people in your lives. You want to be proactive with your family, social, and community life. Commit time for sleep, rest, and reflection. You need to spend time away from work. You need that time to rest and rejuvenate yourself. If you become sleep deprived, you'll be less productive and you're more likely to fall ill. It keeps your mind healthy and you fresh and ready to go. And then finally, the last one is commit time for learning something new. Become a lifelong learner and you'll keep your mind fit for the long haul. So those are just a few of the last best practices and things to think about when you're managing your time. And I hope that you use many of the tools that have been covered in this course to use Outlook as a support to make sure that you're able to manage a good balance between your work and your personal life.